Hi everyone, welcome to the new episode of eCom 365. I'm CEO and co-founder of ShopAgain.io. In eCom 365, we try to answer the challenges that e-commerce businesses and marketers face in their daily life. For this episode, I have a new guest with me, Austin. He is an SEO wizard. He owns an agency that helps businesses step up their SEO game. In fact, in our last episode, Ian told us how he was able to take his store to six-figure only with SEO. So we really decided to double down and bring in Austin to help our audience understand how to do that. Austin has worked with a lot of e-commerce companies, and today Austin is going to share with us how your online store can do better with SEO. Thanks for joining us, Austin. Could you tell our audience a little bit about yourself first?
Absolutely, and thanks for having me. Myself, as you mentioned, I'm an SEO guy. I run an agency called Conversion Media, where we help businesses of all sorts, and a decent portion of those are e-commerce businesses, both on the B2B and B2C side, really focusing on what we call SEO-focused content marketing. So content marketing being, all these broad efforts we have that you're producing content, but primarily focused on what ranks in search, what works well there, as well as what helps further down the funnel. So excited to chat about a variety of things here specific to e-commerce businesses, because it's a little different than some of the more, shall we say, like service-oriented businesses and things like that. It's a slightly different ballgame.
Absolutely. All right. So there's one thing I quite often hear, that SEO has the highest ROI of any e-commerce marketing campaign. So, could you explain this a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that really comes down to the fact that SEO compounds over time. And so in the long run, SEO is generally one of the most profitable marketing channels for any type of online focused business. That being said, it may not be in the short run, right? When we look at what does it take to compete on keywords? What does it take to get that organic traffic? It gets easier over time. The initial grind to making the channel reach like break even and be a profitable channel can be quite tough. For new brands, it's really hard to compete. You don't yet have the base of authority. You haven't produced the content yet, and getting there takes a while. But once you do, it tends to get easier and easier over time. So for instance, we'll probably talk about link building a little later on, one of the kind of key aspects to building authority. Trying to get to the point where you can rank things with link building is a grind. It takes a lot of work, a lot of outreach, a lot of kind of figuring out what it's going to take to get other people to link to you. But then as you build that base of authority, it gets easier and easier to rank things to the point where some large brands, they publish a page, they don't have to do any promotion of it. It ranks instantly and they're competitive from day one. So it's that long run channel. I think it's probably for most businesses, not the first channel you make work, but when you have one or two other things working, maybe you've got ads are profitable for you. You've figured out some of your, main email sequences. Maybe you've got some SMS marketing going, some retargeting, and you're saying, okay, what's next? What's the channel that's going to diversify us out of being reliant on things like Facebook and Google ads? That's where SEO comes in and can really, over the long run, make you much more profitable.
All right. So, when it comes to SEO, and especially, e-commerce businesses, they make a lot of mistakes. You can also say, the opportunities they miss. Could you tell us some of those that you have experienced in your work?
Yeah, absolutely. A few things come to mind. One of the biggest things I see that a lot of e-commerce businesses will miss is that they'll start publishing blog content. And of course, they're trying to make, as much of it as possible kind of relate to their product. How much depends on which stage of the funnel they're at. But yeah, what they often miss is just not embedding the product deeply enough in the content. So what I recommend is try, whether you have, a developer helping you, spin up your site on Shopify or something like that. Or you can use plugins like Shoppable or ShopRocket, but try to get product boxes you can actually drop into your blog posts so that when you mention a product in context, you can actually have it right there. They can see, maybe some of the, images, a brief description, be able to visit the product page, which will add more internal links, and that'll help from that perspective, but also that people can add to cart right from there, right? And so then when you mention a product, people can actually see it. It's not just a a line of a link to the name of the product and they have to click off. Give them a little more visual experience. And I think if you're able to do that in the context of content, that can be really helpful.
Okay.
Yeah, I got a few more if you want to keep going on this.
This is a great point. Let's keep going. I want to hear more.
Another thing that a lot of people miss is they don't address search intent correctly. And so what I mean is, they'll have a preconceived notion of what they want to rank for a given keyword, right? Let's say I'm running like an athletics focused e-commerce business, right? And I want to rank for best foam roller. I'd be willing to bet, I searched this right before we jumped on here, that if you search that, what you're going to see is not a product page anywhere in the top 3, top 5, maybe not even on the first page. Instead, what you're going to see are a bunch of articles that are comparing different options, right? The top 5, the top 10, and it's what we would call a commercial comparison query, right? Where people know they want to make a purchasing decision, but they want to be guided on which one's best and see some compare and contrast first. And so making sure that if you're going to go after a particular keyword, go and actually search it, see what really ranks and what content format is that, right? Like what sort of question are they trying to answer? And does, Google and other search engines think the searcher wants? And then try to optimize around that, right? So let's say, again, you may only offer one, but you can still write that compare and contrast piece on like, in which case are we the best? And in which case should you maybe consider something else? And if you can do that, honestly, you stand a much better chance of actually ranking and competing on that. Okay. Does that make sense?
Totally. No, it makes a lot of sense, and what you said is absolutely right. That's how people go about it, starting with blogs that, I want to write on this topic, and they tend to just put what's in their mind out there in the blog. But people will never find your blog in a Google search if it doesn't match the intent of what they are looking for. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I often say, like, give them what the search engines think they want, and then give them what you think they need after that, right? But we're playing in their sandbox. We got to give them what they think the users want. And if I can tack on one more, a lot of people, this is kind of a more advanced later stage thing, but a lot of people miss out on structured data. So if you search Google for structured data, they have lots of documentation on it. Specifically for e-commerce businesses, they have product markup, that's product structured data, where you can actually input some of the details, including like your reviews, the number of reviews, the average star rating, the price range of this product, and things like that. And then when they're obviously, e-commerce product driven queries, you're more likely to rank for those by having that markup and kind of spoon feeding Google, hey, this is what this is. This is a product. Here's the price. Here's the reviews. We address this type of intent very clearly. And so if you're a little further on, you're already getting some traffic, you're thinking about how can we optimize product pages, that would be one of the major things that people often miss.
So what you're suggesting, Austin, this means when their products show up in the Google search, people will also see the price, the rating, review, and some more details. And that's just, you want to put more details of your product out there in the search. It has a higher chances of converting them.
Absolutely. And it increases click-through as well, right? Like if you think about, it's more visually compelling to see that listing that looks a little different, especially, star ratings. That's, not everybody has that, right? So when you see that, star rating and it's say, 4.3 or higher on average, that entices you to click. It's visually appealing and it kind of shows, all right, here's a bit of social proof in the actual search engine results page, which there's no other way to get that really for most queries.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All right. Now, one question I want to ask about is on-page SEO, through keyword optimization. Could you tell us a little bit more about that? How do people do that?
Yeah, I think I see a really common mistake here as well, which is, most e-commerce businesses, most businesses in general, right, cannot compete on their specific product name. Like you can, of course, compete on that. You can rank for that. But what I mean is that's not where the real search volume is, right? Like I may produce a particular, black women's heel, right? And okay, I want to compete on that and I've named it something fancy, right? Something that sounds exotic. But that's not what people are searching, right? People aren't searching for whatever name I gave it. They're searching for the category of the item. So I would encourage you in your kind of on page, especially for product, pages, to optimize the listing itself around the category, knowing that very few brands are ever going to reach enough notoriety where people search for your specific thing, right? Stay with my shoe example here, right? People search for Yeezys or Jordans or what have you, right? These are household names, but very few brands are ever going to get there. And so for the vast majority of e-commerce businesses, it's better to optimize your product listings around the category your thing fits in, even if you have a more specific name for what you call that internal to your brand.
That's actually a great point, Austin. I just want to add some more stuff to that, what you said, Austin. So, it's all right for you guys to come up with a very creative name for your product, but that's not going to work with the SEO. You want to understand the product category, the keyword that people are searching for, which could lead them to your product. And you want to add those keywords, if not in your product name, then in meta tags and your content on that page, that particular keyword, that is what going to get the traffic to your product pages.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can still have your brand name in there, right? That's not the leading thing when you're kind of building your meta titles there, or your descriptions. And then another thing a lot of people miss out on is not achieving enough content depth and not having really good descriptions, right? So two kind of issues there. One is content depth. We talked about this a fair bit, where thin pages that just don't have a lot of unique content on them, often have trouble getting indexed. And if you can't get the page indexed, meaning it's in the list of potential results that might be served up for a given keyword, then you stand no chance of competing if you're not in the index. It's got to be among the options to choose from, right? Where the search engine has already crawled it, decided to add it to that list. And then also, it's just not having a good description. You might miss out on some of the long tail intent, right? Different variations of keywords, what have you, because you're not making it clear exactly what is this, right? So going beyond, kind of the basics, if we're using a clothing example, right? Like size and color, things like that, but also talking a bit more about the style, the origins, what makes this unique in your descriptions as well.
Okay, all right. That's good to know too. My next question is for our audience who have a brick and mortar store. So, what can they do in terms of the local SEO to help drive local traffic to their store?
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, one of the real key things there is Google has something set up called Google My Business, which is meant for local brick and mortar operations. You absolutely want to participate in that. It's huge. If you search for a lot of local things, right? If you add almost anything and then put near me, right, it's going to try to localize the results. It'll often give you what we call a map pack. So you'll see a few results, usually 3 or 4 on the left, option to see more, and then you'll see pins on a map of where they're physically located and how far away from you are they. So making sure you've already set that up, you've verified your ownership, you've filled out as much as you can with, you want to have some nice compelling photos. It's good to source reviews on that listing so that you rank higher in the map pack. That's one of the key features, in addition to being physically close to where the person is searching, is having the most high quality reviews, making sure your hours are accurate, updating that around holidays and things. If you want to go the extra mile, you can post like status updates and things there. So if you're running special sales, promotions, events, what have you, all good stuff to promote on there. So that's one key aspect, right? If you haven't already done that, that's really table stakes for local stuff. And then beyond that, incentivizing those reviews and then getting what we call citations. So kind of different from, national or international link building. You still want to get links back to your site. But if you're a local business, it also matters that you get links from nearby places, right? So your local newspaper, things like that, different kind of other locally focused sites. And then also that your address is frequently mentioned on those pages. So whenever possible, if there are local directories, things like that, you do want to be listed. Maybe the links aren't hugely valuable, but establishing a reference that you really are located there lends that extra legitimacy and can help you rank for local stuff.
Okay, that's very helpful. So the next topic I want to talk to you about, Austin, is link building, to improve authority of your website. But I understand it's a very big topic. So if you could, quickly give our audience how to get a head start on that, how could they start approaching link building to improve their authority? That would be super helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So link building, let me maybe clarify the goal here for anyone that's not familiar. So really what you're trying to do is get external websites, ideally those that are kind of in niche or near it. So where it wouldn't seem out of place that they would link to your website, and you want them to link to you. It's like having other people vouch for your credibility, having other websites vouch for the credibility of yours. And it helps you rank over time. It's kind of the primary driver of what we call authority, right? That you are widely considered to be an authoritative resource for whatever the subject matter is. Often, a lot of it tends to be done via outreach. So actually, sending personalized emails to other people that run other websites or are involved in the management of the content of those websites, and trying to find a good angle where it's mutually beneficial for them to link to you, right? So common tactics here would be guest posts are often the easiest way to get started, right? So if you're an expert in a particular piece of something, maybe you're, in the clothing example, maybe you're a fashion expert and you're going to write about trends for a particular publication, or, going back to our athletics example, right? Maybe you were talking about training methods and supplementation and all these things that are kind of related to your products. And then you will have the opportunity as you produce that content for another brand to kind of naturally link back to your website in a way that makes sense, isn't too promotional. And that can be mutually beneficial. Similarly, you might do what we call like resource link building, where you put together some really high level, let's say you don't have unique websites, but you're a retailer that hosts a lot of other brands. You might put together sizing guides or how to tell, real from fake luxury goods or something like that, right? Resources that a lot of people would reference. And then you can reach out to different types of sites that might be useful for their readers and offer that as something they might want to link to legitimately as a resource for their visitors. So those are a few kind of common tactics you might execute there to hit the ground running with link building.
Okay. So yeah, that also ties in, into writing blogs, which you can also use for link building if they are in general talking about topics which are helpful for people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, generally the more kind of upfront value you can deliver really quickly, and if you can make it stand out from other content by making it, more in depth, more visually compelling, easier to skim, more interactive, right? Always thinking about how can I do it better than anyone else, if possible. And that'll make it that much easier when you go to promote it, because if the content stands out on its own, then it's easier to get that yes, right? People are more enthusiastic about sharing something that really pops off the page in that way.
True. Finally, I'll ask one more question, Austin. So when people do all of these things to improve their SEO game, how do they measure the success at the end? What tools can they use to measure if their SEO is getting better?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think there are two things to really address here. One is really understanding leading versus lagging metrics, right? So what we all ultimately care about is we want to make more sales from organic traffic, right? Like that's what we're really aiming for, right? And so you want to have that tracking set up. We tend to use a lot of like Google Analytics is very heavy for us. There are other platforms like Adobe Analytics that can be really good too. There's some native tracking in platforms like Shopify. But the broader point here being you want to have, say, conversion goals set up, right? All the way bottom of funnel. Somebody added this to their cart, they checked out. Okay, I know that happened. And then you think about, okay, what happens before then? Well, sometimes we have maybe a mid-funnel conversion, right? So say someone signs up for a coupon code. Okay, that's, I've got their email address now. I have permission to continue marketing them. I can drop them in my retargeting ads. This is good, right? Maybe I got their phone number. That's another mid-funnel conversion. So you want to be tracking those. And then on up the funnel, right? Tracking, okay, let's look at what we call our keyword footprint, right? How many keywords are we competing on where we're in the top 3? How about the top 10? How about the top 20, right? And trying to grow that over time as you compete on more keywords. And then you can also look at ththings like your publishing cadence and your link building cadence, right? So you go all the way from first order, these are my inputs. Have we published content that would compete on these keywords? Did we do a good job of trying to address that search intent? Did we build links to it? Those are my inputs. Okay, are we ranking, decently? Are we getting in the top 20, top 10 for these keywords? Okay, are we getting mid-funnel conversions, right? Are people making it through? Are they taking us up on our soft offers? And then all the way down to, okay, are people actually making purchases? Are they making repeat purchases? What's the average order value? How much of our revenue is coming from organic? And so you can kind of track them from the input level of like, are we doing the right things? And then make sure it flows on down over time to where eventually you're a lot more focused on the bottom funnel. Once it's clear that all the other stages are working well. So I encourage people to think through leading metrics to lagging metrics in that order, but make sure you have all the tracking set up from day one if possible.
Great points. Thanks for joining us, Austin. I think our audience has learned a lot about what they can do to get more organic traffic to their online store. Finally, if you guys have any questions about e-commerce, paid acquisition, marketing, retention, development, anything, email us at ecom365@shopagain.io, and we will have them answered by an expert in the future episode. This episode was sponsored by ShopAgain.io, an AI-powered customer retention platform. Thank you for joining us.